Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I wanted to switch up this week's introduction and actually bring on my honored guest, Kevin Coates, and allow him to pretty much share whatever is on his heart and on his mind right now. Kevin Coates is a good friend of mine and a self-awareness coach, and he lives here in the Denver community. And with our current events that are going on, I wanted to invite you on, man. And you know what is your message that you want to share to the world and to the Denver community right now? The floor is yours.
Before I start, I just want to take I want to say a moment of silence, but just a deep breath. I'm devastated by everything that's going on, so I'll just gather myself and really process the conversation we're going to have right now. You know, Dave, when I think about all this taking place, it saddens me. I've experienced a lot of my own racism, my own troubled thoughts around, white-black relationships. There's one word that sticks out to me, and the word is foundation. We're talking about invoking change in the world. When you build a house on a poor foundation, eventually it will have cracks. You know, the walls will crack, the floor will crack. The house won't really sustain itself. When you build poor foundations on work relationships, intimate relationships, relationships of all sorts, the foundation will eventually determine the course of the rest of the relationship, whether it be a year from now, 2 years. When I think about America and the foundation that it was built on superiority of whites over blacks, enslaving blacks, devaluing blacks as humans. And we've had to speak in different ways to try and bring that to the awareness of those who started this foundation. Now, with that being said, I do believe that the responsibility is on both sides to close the gap. And not a race thing, but human to human, two people can't sit across from each other without having open minds. I think from the white community, there has to be a sense of responsibility to accept what the foundation was built on, and I think in the black community, there has to be a level of forgiveness, a level of trust being built. But the conversation alone isn't enough. I think there has to be actions consistently around the commitments to bridge the gap. That's a hard one because, when we talk mental health, and I'm going to come from a psych standpoint, we have egos, we have stubbornness, we have pain, we have trauma, we have perceptions that have been built, we have interpretations that have been long endured, and people can be stuck in their same mental learnings, whether it be racism, whether it be how we parent. The mind is a powerful thing, and so when I look at the foundation of this country, it was built on a platform that wasn't part of an equilibrium. So we see history repeating itself. We see riots, we see protests, we see people acting out. And what I see in the riots, I see disturbed mentalities. I see poor foundations of self. I see people reaching out, trying to get the attention of those who are in power, which happen to be people who are white, who have a lot of the power in this country. And we all know people who have power have a greater chance of influencing and moving mountains as far as viewpoints. Whether it be our leader of America, of any sort, doesn't matter who it is. If you have a position of power, you have a stronger influence. And how you use that power can shift a lot of minds as well. To get to an equilibrium, we got to sit down and have an open, honest conversation. And I think conversation has to have a lot of empathy in it. I thought about this. I've had a lot of excuse me. I've had a lot of conversations around why whites fear blacks or black men. I've personally gone through this at some of the worst levels that people don't even know. People don't even know. I've been through it myself. When I think about why there's so much fear around black people or people of color, whatever you want to categorize us, it's because of guilt. I think those who are white are of shame and guilt from their ancestry, whether they believe it or not. And you do have some people who just don't care. And they love to be in that place. That's just all they know. That's what they were raised and born in. There's a level of guilt. When we shackle and chain any mentality, uh, humanistically, or any animal, and you abuse it and you beat it, it grows in hurt. It grows in despair. Prolonged hurt turns into anger. And if you're not taught how to express that anger in a sensible way, you just impulsively react. So I think that's what we're seeing with all the riots. You're seeing a lot of people who are really hurt. They're ridden with a bunch of sadness, despair. They're grieving. They feel valueless or devalued. And this is a crowd for help. I can tell you from personal experience where I've come from, people who really didn't value themselves had no compassion. They had no empathy for anybody else. That's why in the black community, eventually we have a lot of murders. People who don't feel worthy, you have homicidal ideation and you have suicidal ideation. It's one of the two for the most part. You either take a life or take something from someone else, or you feel so less of yourself or that you don't belong, you feel like you don't deserve to be here. Um, I'm writing a book, and one of the things I'm mentioning in the book is that in our community, we don't, suicide rates aren't really comparable to other communities because we've lived in a constant state of survival. Last thing we want to do is take our own lives. We would take from family or friends just to survive. And so what you have is a survivor's mentality, which can be animal-like, which can scare people because some of the tendencies and symptoms of it are irrational. They're very scary. But I also want to speak on generalizing. I don't believe that one cop, one black person, one white person is racist. I just don't believe. I don't believe that's fair. But generalizations of any sort are the easy way out. They're the easy way out because we can say one of whatever. The sample is the population in the whole, and I don't agree with that. But it's the easy way out. Not a lot of people are ready to sit down and dig deep on both sides. And that's what I see. And as long as we have people in power or people who don't want to sit down and have an open mind, just have a conversation about how can we bridge this gap? What do the action items look like? How can we systematically influence it in favor for everybody? And we're years out. We might be decades out, but um, that's just my interpretation. And when I look at it all and what I see, so you need to have two people willing to sit down and admit wrongdoing and then work on forgiveness. And forgiveness is just a hard one, no matter if it's racism or betrayal or of any sort. It's just a hard one to really grasp. Um, I've had my moments of being resentful. I've had my moments of feeling hated just because of the color of my skin. But I think because I have a strong sense of foundation within myself, I've never changed who I am and who I've become. And I've seen those relationships turn around tenfold. So I know it's possible. Um, but it takes a certain level of self-awareness and a certain level of education and openness to really start to bridge a gap. And like I said, it's going to take a while. But if you take two people, you sit down, one is narrow-minded, one is open, eventually someone will shut down. There's not going to be any flow and connection. Two people who are closed-minded or narrow-minded who want to one-up each other, we're not going to get anywhere. And that's not even a specific to racism type of conversation. That's just any relationship, whether it be our intimate ones, whether it be with our kids. It's just human to human. So, um, all in all, I think the foundation of what this country was built on uh, has long dictated everything that's come after that. To be quite specific, um, that I know of, we as blacks didn't write history books that has the stories of slavery inside of them. We didn't create that. We didn't write those. We didn't segregate the schools. We had no control over water fountains and all that stuff. These were things that were implemented by people who had knowledge, resources, and control. Um, when you're on the other side of that, think about how valueless someone may feel when all they want to do is give a fair chance to their kids and their families. And when you've been deprived of that, you grow angry and you take, you steal, you rob, you kill just to survive. So it can seem very animalistic. And some may not want to have that tough conversation, but that's just how I see the reality being, having lived it and experienced it. Um, I don't condone the riots. I don't think it's fair to do what's being done to the communities and all the businesses, but I do understand the mentalities of why people are behaving the way they are. I'm a firm believer that we behave the way we think. And so if we're thinking chaotically or feeling devalued, feeling hopeless, um, you feel mentally suffocated and you'll react in some way, shape, or form. And I tell you, man, if someone doesn't value their own life, they're not going to have the empathy. They're not going to have the space to value somebody else's, let alone somebody else's material business. And I think that's what we're seeing with the riots. I can't sit and tell you that I know what's going to happen from all this, but there's a huge awakening that's happening with Corona and all that's going on. And we're all human. And if we can't come together to make this work, um, we'll just continue to see chaos, in our own country. And with that type of chaos breeds more chaotic minds, and you something has to give. When you're in a relationship, somebody has to surrender for the other person to feel safe, but there has to be a surrender on both sides. And one of the things that I think about, Dave, and I know we've only taken too much of your time. I don't know if this really plays a part or not, but there's two movies that come to mind when I think of all this. I can be pretty right brain and creative and start thinking, oh wow. I think the Planet of the Apes. You take this ape and you train it and you inject it with something. You make it intelligent. Well, now this ape in particular knows how to create a community and establish family. Towards the end of the movie, all they wanted to do is run across the bridge to get to a safe space. Well, the humans felt threatened by the intelligence that Caesar the May ape really felt. They felt threatened. They gave him knowledge, and he knew how to build with it. And that's kind of how I feel with Black people. We were hindered from being educated. Therefore, it's not a priority in our communities. We long were told that this is something we shouldn't obtain, and it's poisonous. But we do now have a lot of resources to be educated, to be successful in this world. We do have a lot of freedom. There have been big strides. I won't say that hasn't happened. But systematically, the things that are not on the surface still do exist. And the last movie is The Joker. I think The Joker was a great depiction of mental health. And the moment he stood on top of that car, you saw all of these people come out who felt like he was just a breath of fresh air. Even though it was toxic and it was chaotic, it was in a very unhealthy essence. There were people who were grieving and felt the way he felt. And when he started to do what he started to do, from a psychological standpoint, people felt like that was their voice being expressed through him. So they idolize and worship that. And what we have going on right now, you have people following that same mentality. There's a reason these movies do exist, because directors know, they research, and they know it can be lifelike. It can be very relative. I say to you, Dave, when have you seen a movie that shows slavery and there's a bunch of rich, wealthy, educated Black people with, white people enslaved? Why hasn't that been a movie? Well, I guess it's not a great depiction of reality, and nor do we even want that. It's not something we want. We don't want to fight for equal equilibrium to enslave or to be above. We just want to be treated fair have a fair chance at life, because we all just go around this thing once, and then we die. We go on to the next place that's meant to be. Um, and so yeah, it's I think there just has to be open conversation at the highest level among all communities, among all expertise. Uh, and it just has to be open. As long as we're closed, black, white, whatever, doesn't Hispanic, whatever. As long as we're closed, there's just no access points to even transfer any energy to uplift. That's just my opinion.
Man, I just want to say thank you very much for
For
taking
sure,
the time to share that, because your message has so much value. And that's why here at the podcast, our core value is community. And within our community, we have to have a foundation of inclusion,
for sure,
and everyone is welcome. And if you believe that Kevin's message has value today, please share it with one or two other people, because the voice of change starts here with us, as the individual. And what we invite ourselves to do is make change, take action, and do everything that we possibly can to make our community move forward together.
for sure. Yeah,
So if you
not
guys are out there and you need resources, please reach out to Kevin. You can find him on Facebook, Kevin Coates, as well as other resources in our community like the Center for Shared Insight. They're accepting new clients for teletherapy. If you just need to get something out, be heard, be seen, these are some great resources within our community. And before I let you go, Kevin, what's one last thing you want to leave us with?
um, honestly, just try to have an open mind for everyone. Just have an open mind. I know I've been around mental health. I know mental health quite a bit. I'm confident in that avenue. I'm confident in the human brain and how it works. And it started with my own traumas. As long as we stay in some aspects of a victim mentality or a superiority of another, we will continue to breed hate. We will continue to breed disconnect. And I know deep down, humanistic, that's not what we want. Anger is pretty much prolonged hurt of any sort. And irrational thinking leads to irrational behavior. So I just say try to remain open, try to find ways to continue to heal, have the conversations that you need to. I've been very emotional myself over the last week. Um, I've been very triggered. My cries haven't come out, even though I feel them within my body. They want to, they just haven't happened. My body works that way. Try to remain open and continue to get your mind around some healthy stuff. Right now, Facebook, social media, rightfully so, it's loaded with content of all sorts, good, bad, ugly. Try to keep something positive in your life. We're all hurting. This is just waking us up to something great, as it has been for the last 50 plus years. I don't know when it'll be resolved, but try to have a balance of something healthy mentally within your life and remain open. We're gonna figure it out now. We're gonna figure it out in a year. This is a long-winded process, so just do your part as best you can, and take care of your kids as well. I've seen a lot of people having to speak on how to explain this to their kids. It's a tough conversation. Do you really want to introduce it so early on? I don't know the answer to that. But if they're seeing it on social media, um, may be forced to have that conversation. So reach out to your peers and your professional networks, and just know that community is always a beneficial thing. It's always beneficial to have good, healthy community. Um, and I appreciate it, Dave, for you. Pretty much, you inspired me to do this. I was reluctant. I'll admit I was very reluctant to do this, just because I want to make sure that I'm communicating respectfully across the board. Uh, but I appreciate you pushing me and helping me level up to expressing this. I usually don't, but I'm grateful for it. So I appreciate it, Dave.
It's my pleasure, Kevin. We can have a
Always.
conversation. Again, thank you. I'd love to have a conversation anytime,
Yep.
next to each other and not across from each other on the table,
It's coming, baby. It's coming. We're going to get there.
That's exactly right, guys. And stay tuned for the rest of Kevin's episode, because we do talk about fatherhood, relationships, and building that strong foundation. So I know your time's valuable, Kevin. I'm going to let you go with a big, huge thank you, man. And And tune in, guys, for the rest of the episode because Kevin's got always a valuable message to share.
I appreciate it, Dave. Thank you.